All right, ready for another deep dive? This time, we're heading back to Genesis chapter 46.
Buckle up. It's a big one.
It's not just another family reunion story, is it? It feels like a pivotal moment in biblical history, but also for, well, everything that comes after.
You're right. I mean, this isn't just a reunion. It's a turning point. The Israelites' entire saga in Egypt hinges on this moment. We're talking generations shaped by this event.
Okay, so just to get everyone on the same page, we're picking up after Jacob, or Israel, as he's also known.
Yeah, the two names can get a little confusing.
Right, after he discovers that Joseph, his son, is alive. And not just alive, but
Thriving. Let's not forget thriving.
thriving in Egypt. Talk about a plot twist. Remember that whole sold into slavery but rose to power storyline.
It's a classic for a reason. It's got it all. Betrayal, redemption, you name it.
And now famine strikes, and Jacob and his whole family, they're packing up and heading to Egypt to reunite with Joseph. But there's this crucial stop on their way, Beersheba.
You can't just breeze through Beersheba. It's too important.
What's so special about this place? It feels like more than just a pit stop on a long journey.
Way more. It's almost like, think of it as the spiritual cornerstone for this whole family.
How so?
Well, this is where the covenant with God was renewed again and again. First Abraham, then Isaac, and now Jacob. It's all happening in Beersheba.
It's like this thread of faith, this connection that keeps getting passed down.
A spiritual legacy, absolutely. It's that continuity, that unbroken chain that makes Beersheba so powerful.
It all comes back to those divine promises, doesn't it?
Always.
They're woven into the very fabric of this family's story.
Absolutely. And right on cue, here at Beersheba, what happens? God appears to Jacob.
Like clockwork.
And he reaffirms that promise, the promise that Jacob's descendants will become a great nation.
But not just any nation, a great nation in Egypt, of all places.
Exactly. It's a crucial detail in Egypt, where they're about to, become this huge presence.
It's like foreshadowing on an epic scale.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the other part of the promise, and it's even bigger. God also promises to bring them back to the promised land.
Two-part prophecy. That's playing the long game.
Huge implications for the future, as we know.
No kidding. So now we've got this huge family reunion on the horizon, and Genesis, being Genesis, gives us the whole guest list, right? We've got a full-blown genealogy here, a who's who of Jacob's family.
It's quite a roster.
We're talking Leah and her 33 descendants, then Zilpah and Bilhah, the maidservants, they have their children too, which,
It's a good reminder. Family trees. Rarely simple. Even back then.
Understatement of the century. And then, of course, we have Rachel, Jacob's favored wife, with her 14 descendants.
Including Joseph and Benjamin, the youngest.
Okay, so we've got a lot of names to juggle here. And speaking of numbers, I'm a little stuck on this detail. The text says 66 descendants plus Jacob, so 67 total, right?
Right.
Then add Joseph's 2 sons who were born in Egypt, and that brings us to 69. But then Genesis says 70. What's going on there? Did someone forget to carry a 1?
It seems like a small thing, this numbers game, but it's actually pretty fascinating.
Oh.
It actually points to variations that existed in ancient biblical texts, things that were copied by hand, after all.
So we're talking about different versions of the Bible.
Think of it more like different manuscripts, copies of copies, each with slight variations. For example, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, these scrolls, they're older than the traditional Hebrew texts that we use today. And guess what they mention? More of Joseph's children born in Egypt.
So more descendants running around.
Exactly, which could easily account for that difference in the total count.
So we're not talking about an error, really, but rather
a glimpse into the evolution of these texts, how they were transmitted and preserved over time. It's really a testament to the meticulous work of biblical scholars.
Real detective work.
Oh, absolutely. They compare these variations, analyze them, and try to understand the history behind every single word.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It reminds us that even these ancient texts that we think we know so well, they still hold surprises.
Okay, so we've got a divinely guided journey, a family reunion with a cast of characters that could fill a football stadium.
Don't forget the textual intrigue.
Right. And we haven't even gotten to the emotional heart of this reunion yet.
And believe me, that's where things get really interesting.
This reunion, this moment, after all these years of Jacob thinking that Joseph was, gone, it's got to be one of the most powerful scenes in the whole Bible.
Oh, without a doubt. And the text lays it bare, all that raw emotion. Jacob sees Joseph, and what does he say? Now I can die.
It's intense. I mean, to our modern ears, it sounds almost, kind of morbid.
Sure, out of context, maybe. But back then, it meant something completely different.
So not just grief or despair.
No, not at all. Think about it. In ancient times, that statement, it was actually a profound expression of peace, of fulfillment.
Because he'd accepted Joseph's death.
Lived with it. Probably never thought he'd see his son alive again. And now, here's Joseph, not just alive, but successful, thriving even. It's like all those years of pain, of wondering, they just melt away. It's the ultimate validation of God's promise.
Wow. Makes you think, like, what does it mean to really feel complete in life?
Makes you examine your own life, that's for sure.
For sure. So we have this massively emotional reunion, and then suddenly it's like the story shifts gears. Joseph starts giving all these instructions to his family, specifically about what to tell Pharaoh.
This is where it gets good.
Right. Like, why all the secrecy? What's the big deal?
Strategy. This is pure Joseph thinking 10 steps ahead. He tells his family to tell Pharaoh they are shepherds.
Shepherds. So what's the big deal about being a shepherd? It's an honest living, right?
In many cultures, sure, but not in Egypt. Remember, this is a society obsessed with agriculture. Their whole world revolved around the Nile, the land.
Right, those fertile banks, all that.
So shepherds, with their wandering flocks, their way of life, it represented a threat. They were seen as disruptive, unclean, a danger to those carefully cultivated fields.
So Joseph's telling them to lie, to basically make themselves look bad.
It's more nuanced than that. He's playing the long game. He knows that by making his family seem like outsiders, undesirable even, they're more likely to be kept separate, distinct.
So they don't just blend in and disappear into the Egyptian melting pot.
Exactly. It's a way to preserve their identity, their culture, their connection to those promises God made. And let's be real, it was a pretty clever move.
He was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
And that, my friend, is how you ensure your people survive, even thrive, in a new land. It's about adaptation, about choosing your battles. It's something people still grapple with today, right?
For sure. Trying to fit in, but also hold on to who you are. It's a universal struggle. We've got divine promises, we've got family secrets, and now we've got a little bit of social engineering. This is why I love diving into these stories. There's always something new to uncover. Back again. This deep dive into Genesis, chapter 46, I mean, wow. We've covered a lot of ground here.
It's amazing how much this one chapter packs in.
Seriously. So, as we get ready to wrap things up, let's take a minute to kind of pull it all together. What are the big takeaways for you, if you had to pick just a few?
Well, for me, it always comes back to those promises, the promises God made.
Right. They're kind of hard to miss.
Exactly. It's like this thread, this through line that runs through generations, Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. Even when things are tough, when the future is uncertain, there's that promise, a promise of a blessing, a future, a homeland. I think that's pretty powerful.
It's their bedrock, isn't it? That faith, that identity. What else? What else really stood out to you?
The family drama, of course.
Yeah.
You can't have a good story without a little bit of that, right?
And boy, does this family have some stories.
What I love is that it reminds us, these biblical figures, these patriarchs, they were human, just like us,
Right.
flawed, complex, driven by the same emotions.
It makes them relatable, like you can see echoes of your own family in theirs.
Absolutely. And who could forget that whole thing with the numbers, the extra person in the genealogy? So much fun.
Like a biblical math problem.
Right. But really, it just shows us that the Bible, this book, it's a living thing. It's been copied, translated, debated, pored over for centuries. And that's what makes it so fascinating.
It's a window into history, not just faith.
Exactly. It's layers upon layers of history, tradition, interpretation.
So we've got divine intervention, we've got family secrets, we've got ancient mysteries, and this is just one chapter.
And we haven't even gotten to Moses yet.
Yeah.
But that's a deep dive for another day.
Seriously. But thinking about this reunion, right, this meeting between Jacob and Joseph, it's not just a happy ending. It's the beginning of something much bigger, isn't it? Oh, absolutely. This is it. This is the moment. The Israelites' time in Egypt is about to begin.
And we all know how that story goes.
It's a story for the ages. Adaptation, resilience, oppression, and ultimately liberation. And it all starts right here with this reunion, with all its messiness, all its complexities.
Wow, it really makes you think about the ripple effects of everything. A single choice, a single journey.
And the legacy we leave behind.
A lot to ponder, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you, as always, for diving deep with us. And until next time.